Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome again to another community spotlight here by BoxCon Global. I am your host, Hobbit. Welcome for anyone returning to these videos, and welcome, of course, to the new faces. So today I am joined by a lovely gentleman all the way from Puerto Rico. Please make some noise for Black Rhythm. The crowd goes crazy. How you doing,
Awesome.
man?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, of course, man. It's great to it's great to have a chat, and I'm looking forward to learning some stuff about you because you have pretty good backstory. You've done a lot of amazing things, so we're gonna delve right into those today. So first of all, how I start off all of these conversations, the classic is talk about you, Black Rhythm's beatbox journey. How did you discover beatboxing? How long have you been doing it, and what brings you, what brings you here today?
Well, I've been beatboxing for about 9 years now. I started beatboxing back in 2011, and it was because I had seen a Joel Turner video of him performing at the Australian Idol final like contest announcement kind of thing. And then he did a show, and I remember at the time I didn't really know that such a thing as beatboxing existed. I didn't know that there were people that could do incredible sounds, incredible music with using just their voices, and that's what really sort of struck a chord with me when I saw Joel Turner perform. I was very impressed. I was very entertained. I was very sort of mesmerized by what he was doing. And that kind of got me started in this beatboxing journey that I've been in for almost a decade now. After that, I saw other videos of other viral beatboxers at the time, people like Joseph Pulpo from France and his showcase for the France Got Talent auditions, and also Dave Crow videos of him, busking in the streets of London and other cities. And that's what really sort of let me know that this thing was happening and there were people doing it in different countries. And then I decided to look for a tutorial. At the time, I was already using tutorials for other things. I was really into sports, really into basketball. Wanted to play professional basketball at the time, so that was kind of my focus. Back then, I was in college already when I saw my first beatboxing video, and so I decided to see if there were tutorials for beatboxing because I thought it was something that maybe I could try, maybe I could do. I thought it was really fun, and it was free. I didn't have to,
Yes, it is.
invest in any sort of instruments. One of my best friends is a musician, a drummer. I had already dabbled on the possibility of learning how to play the drum kit, but like years before. Um, but it wasn't until I saw these three beatboxers, and then I discovered that there were tutorials on beatboxing
Mm.
that I really started to sort of walk in the journey of the sound.
Yeah, nice, man. That's dope. So yeah, a nice, interesting story. Seeing those amazing videos. And shout out to Joel Turner, shout out to Dave Crow, because yeah, they've really set the bar for YouTube views back in the day, man. Those views were getting crazy ones. And then
Yeah.
so after you kind of discovered beatboxing and got into it, when was it you first like started performing or like beatboxing on a stage?
Well, so I started watching the tutorials. I remember people like Fat Tony, shout out to Fat
Yeah,
Tony.
shout out to Fat
People
Tony.
like Looperman, shout out to Looperman.
Yeah.
And also just Gavin Tide on the Human Beatbox uh, tutorials back in the days. Shout out Gavin. So after that, so a couple weeks, a couple months went by, and I remember the first time I performed for like a crowd was at a retreat at my church at the time. It was like a youth retreat, and we were doing karaoke. And I sort of decided that I was just going to beatbox instead. And that was kind of the first time that I performed for my friend. And then in 20, so times sort of started passing. I started beatboxing online, back in the days of like Skype, and Ventrilo. I had made like my very first beatboxing video for YouTube, around 2011, 2012, and another Puerto Rican beatboxer by the name of Premzi, shout out to Premzi, commented on my video that he was also a Puerto Rican beatboxer, and he wanted to have a chat with me and sort of get to know me. And so he gave me his number. Like, he actually put his phone number on the comment section of the video. And so I immediately called him the next day, and we just started talking and beatboxing every day. He introduced me to a whole bunch of beatboxers from like the Ventrilo community at the time. Beatboxers who were doing like jams on like PlayStation, like the Call of Duty conference rooms, and all of that. So that's kind of how I started, uh, participating in the beatboxing community globally. And then locally, like in Puerto Rico, I performed at that retreat. And then in 2013, at the very first Puerto Rican Beatbox Championships, December 19th, 2013, was when I would say the Puerto Rican beatbox community, or the Puerto Rican beatboxing scene, kind of got started, because that was the first beatbox first event ever in the history of Puerto Rico.
Wow.
And that's kind of how, the scene has been growing over the past 7 years, via the Puerto Rico National Championships, and then the forums that have grown, the Facebook page, the Instagram, the Discord server, etc. So that's kind of, how I started performing live. I was also doing some performances in college. There was an event where, like, the last Friday of every month, there was like a open mic thing happening in college. So I used to go there every month and perform. There was also another open mic situation that was happening in Rio Piedras, which is the city where my university was at. And so there was a lot of I guess cultural musical events happening, open mics where people could just go and perform music, poetry, spoken word, whatever. And so I started going to those as often as possible to practice, to sort of polish my beats, and also just learn how to perform. So that was happening 2013 and then 2014, and that's kind of how, I guess, Black Rhythm the Performer was born, I would say.
Yeah, nice. Was flung straight into the performance world. Nice, man. So you briefly touched on the Puerto Rican beatbox scene. I'd like to talk a bit more about that. What is the scene, the beatbox scene, like in Puerto Rico? Obviously, you mentioned the Puerto Rican National Championships, and you are the 2016 Puerto Rican champion and two-time vice champion, I think, 2013.
Yeah.
2014.
2013, 2014. Yeah.
So how is the scene out there? What's it like?
The relationship between beatboxing and Puerto Rico is actually very strong, a lot stronger than a lot of people might think, mainly because one of the beatboxing pioneers was actually Puerto Rican. The beatboxer Wise, one of the pioneers of like the vocal scratching technique, was actually a Puerto Rican. I was born in Fajardo, Puerto Rico, and then moved to New York by the age of 4.
Okay.
Another fun fact is that one of the rappers from the Fat Boys, Cool Rock Ski, if I'm not mistaken, was he had a Puerto Rican mother.
I did not know.
Yes. Yeah. So beatboxing really has been around since the inception of hip hop in Puerto Rico, because Puerto Ricans are a huge part of the development of what today we call hip hop culture.
100%.
Via rapping, via beatboxing, via b-boying and b-girling. We were there alongside, our African American brothers and sisters, and that's kind of how that happened. So, but that's different from the actual scene, the actual community. That's why I'm separating those two dates. I'm not the first beatboxer in Puerto Rico by any means. I'm more of the new school beatboxing community, homebred beatboxer. So that's been happening since 2013. We've been able to do a national championship pretty much every year since 2013, except for 2018. And we've also been able to grow online. Like I said, Beatbox Puerto Rico has a Facebook page, an Instagram page, a Discord server. We have a YouTube channel, and that has helped us to be more present and be more visible internationally speaking. I would say that the amount of beatboxers that Puerto Rico has grown considerably over that time period. And the level of beatboxing that's happening here has also grown. Like I was a judge as well as a producer of the last national championships. And I remember thinking, how much harder would it be to be a national championship now versus when I was battling? Because the amount of beatboxers and the level, like everybody's just better now. And there's also a lot of, I would say it's also a very young scene, you know. I'm 28 years old and I'm actually the elder statesman of the group. So we have a lot of teenagers from the ages of like 16 to 19 that are really participating in weekly beatbox battles on Discord, on different servers, and sort of building that next generation of beatboxers coming out of Puerto Rico. So it's been, for me, it's just been very exciting for me to be able to contribute and create spaces for younger beatboxers that I didn't necessarily have when I was that age or when I started to beatbox. So it's I'm very happy for that. Very exciting, and I think there's so much room to grow still. So yeah.
Sick. Yeah, man, it's super interesting, and it's I think it's inspirational for a lot of people from other communities to know that, you know, you've got a strong live community, as it were, with the championships and all these things happening, but then you also have a really strong online community, which, you know, both of those together means that, you know, that community is just going to keep growing. So yeah, that's really sick to hear. The other thing I wanted to talk about, which was the Latin American Beatbox Championships, which and you were the first Puerto Rican beatboxer to represent there?
Yeah. I'm actually the first Caribbean beatboxer to be at the Latin American Beatbox Championships. The first live Latin American Beatbox Championships, those were in 2017 in Peru, right?
Yeah.
But before that, there were actually 3 online versions of the Latin Championships. So my first time actually competing at the regional level was in 2015, when there was a Latin Champs online back when Ventrilo, you know, was big. Shout RP for a minute of silence for Ventrilo. So that happened, and then in 2017 was when we were actually able to make the first live in-person Latin American Beatbox Championships.
For anyone who doesn't know what the Latin American Championships is, could you explain?
Yeah, so the Latin Championships are basically a continental championship that goes from anybody that's from North America, Mexico, the Caribbean, South America, and Central America. Anybody who's a national champion can compete for the title of Latin American champion. It's kind of like the Asian championships, but in Latin America.
On the other side of the world.
On the other side of the world. Yeah, that's basically what happens. So, for
Okay.
example, if you win the Puerto Rican champs, then
Yep.
you qualify to represent your country at
Okay.
the Latin champs as well as at the world champs. So
Mm.
that's kind of how that goes, and it's basically the same rules, the same categories as other international beatbox events. The host country is usually decided beforehand. It's not necessarily something that happens at the same place
Sure.
in every edition of it. In 2017, it was in Peru. In 2019, it was supposed to be in Chile. Because now that event is produced by Planeta Beatbox.
Yep.
And they have like their headquarters in Chile.
Yep.
But that couldn't happen for extraordinary reasons, and now it should be held in 2022. Just to give it time for this whole pandemic situation to die down a little bit. And those should be held in Argentina, in Buenos Aires.
Oh wow, sick.
That's kind of like the plan. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, sick. Man, I'd love to make it out to it. I love the concept of these kind of the battles that bring countries together, rather than, you know, having your own national championships is obviously something you have to do, and it's great to have, but, you know, the same as you say, like the Asia championships and like the Latin American champs, I love that vibe of being like, oh, this is the Puerto Rican champion, this is the Argentinian champion, this is and having these all come together for like some epic battle is great.
And one thing that's really important that happens in Latin America is that our region has just recently started to grow, and not only grow but come together as a unit. And the Latin champs gave us the opportunity to meet each other and to support one another on whatever it is that's happening in our respective countries beatbox wise. So it's become a place where we can talk about where we want our regional scene to go, you know. And so we have those meetings. I'm the representative for the Puerto Rican Beatbox community with Planeta Beatbox. So every other country has kind of like their people that sort of representatives, people that direct it locally, and then we have meetings. And then we talk about how can we support one another, and that has really helped us to be stronger when it comes to our presence at the international beatboxing scene.
Totally. Yeah, that's interesting, man, and I think that's a really inspirational way of doing it, because it means that not just like one community or one country has been like, hey, we're going to do this big battle, everyone come over and do it. You're actually all talking, all collaborating to make this event and make the whole project and everything as strong as it can be, which, yeah, I think it's an amazing thing to do, man. And lastly, the last battle kind of topic I'd like to talk about with you is what you touched on, which was the world champs, and you are the first Puerto Rican Caribbean beatboxer to represent at the World Beatbox Championships. So how was that? What was it like taking part in the Beatbox Battle World Championships?
Well, first of all, I would say it was a very humbling experience to be able to represent your country at the biggest beatboxing event there is. So that right off the bat was something that I felt a lot of pride in, to just represent my small area of the world at the biggest stage of the thing that I love to do. It was also a very enlightening cultural experience, because it was my first time going to Germany. It was my first time going to Europe. Wow. It was by far the farthest or the longest I've had to travel to go somewhere. Sure. So just the experience of like being at the airport, trying to figure out how are you going to get to Berlin, because I don't speak German at all. Yep. So it was actually a very crazy experience on that front, and also just getting a chance to meet a lot of beatboxers that some of them I didn't know, and some of them I've been following them for years, and to
Sure.
be able to say to their faces that they've been inspirational for XYZ reason, to be able to beatbox, to jam with these beatboxers, to be able to just talk to them and get to know them a little bit more
For sure.
on the personal side was also a great experience. And also just for me to be able to do as well as I did, at the champs, was definitely a great, sort of the cherry on top of the whole experience.
Sick. Wicked, man. And yeah, I think, you hit the nail on the head. It's like one of the proudest moments is when you can go and be the person representing your country at the World Championships, which is amazing. So big up for doing that and big up for smashing it there as well. I was watching on the live stream. Sadly, I couldn't be there, but I was enjoying the live stream.
Awesome, awesome, yeah, yeah.
Um, so moving on from kind of the battle side of life, I wanted to talk about more of some of the projects you've done, and you've got some amazing stuff that you've done, and one of these things is you've done a TED Talk, and you're the first Puerto Rican beatboxer to do a TED Talk. Can you explain to everyone kind of what was that experience like, and what did you talk about?
Of course. Well, I had been a fan of Ted for years prior, the years prior, me actually doing one. I remember back in 2013, there was a TEDx Youth event happening in San Juan, which is where I'm from,
Yep.
it's the capital of Puerto Rico. Um, and I remember thinking, wow, I would really like to be at that stage one day, because I just love the idea of being able to share some of the things that I've learned about life through beatboxing.
Mm.
At first, it was about um, continuing to promote beatboxing in any stage, in any way, shape, form, capacity, any place that I could. I'm always thinking that's one of the things that's always at the forefront of my mind. And then as I grew and as I continued to just walk on this journey, what I like to call my rhythm journey, I realized that there were certain things that I learned about life through my transformation from athlete to artist that I thought could be relatable to anybody that was trying to do something new, that was trying to conquer their fears and be who they've never been so that they can do what they've never done.
Sure.
So my TED Talk was about my journey and that transition to how I went from wanting to be a professional basketball player, be a professional athlete, to now I want to contribute to the development of local music in Puerto Rico.
Mm.
And what were some of the things that I learned? What were some of the things that I had to do? What were some of the attitudes and mindsets and ideas that I had to let go of, and things that I had to learn so that I could do that?
Mm.
And I referenced this quote from the American poet T.S. Eliot that talks about how only those that dare to go too far can possibly find out how far they can go. And I use that as a metaphor to kind of inspire and motivate the audience to be willing to embrace the uncertainty that comes with trying something new. And a lot of times, especially as adults, we live in a culture that stigmatizes mistakes, and as adults, we have forgotten the fact that making mistakes is a part of life, and things are usually done not very well before we can do them really well. And that happens with beatboxing. We started out sounding horrible, and then we kept at it, and through discipline, consistency, and valor, and courage, we kept at it, and then we were able to do other things and actually become legitimate beatboxers. And I think that is applicable to anybody that's either wants to try out a new job, or wants to go into a new field, or wants to ask somebody out on a date, or wants to start a new relationship, or
Sure.
wants to talk to their family members that they haven't done so in years because there's a situation happening. Any situation where we have to look fear in the eye and say, I'm gonna do this in spite of the fact that I may be a little bit scared because
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm gonna be successful at this. And that's just kind of the general vibe, the general theme of what I wanted to communicate.
Sick. Yeah, but it's an amazing TED talk, man. I really enjoyed it, and I think, you know, TED as a platform, they've supported many beatboxers who have done talks and done kind of performances and stuff. And, you know, do you think TED and TEDx is a good platform for beatboxers to share their craft and, you know, to get their stories out there?
I would say yes. I was actually when I was researching what type of TED talk do I want to do, because I didn't want to just perform in the words of Dave Crow. That's already been done by some very impressive beatboxers. So I wanted to take that a little bit further and try to combine the performance aspect with a story that I could share, and sort of try to be a blessing to somebody that's on the other side of the screen. So I think any beatboxer out there that actually has a story to tell, actually has a message, or is doing some type of work that deserves to be communicated so that other people can take that information, learn it, apply it, and then build upon it, I would say go for it.
Sick. Yeah, I totally agree, man. I think it's a great platform, and I think the way that each artist kind of handles it differently and does their TED talk very unique to themselves. It shows the range of what, you know, this beatbox community has as well. So yeah, so big up for doing it, man. I really enjoyed it. And if you haven't checked it out, make sure you get on YouTube and check out Black Rhythm's TED Talk.
Yes.
Yeah, make sure. So moving on to some other things you've done, I'd like to kind of talk about some of the group projects that you're part of. You know, you're founding member of a cappella group Los. Is it? I'm gonna think it's pronounced Los because it's LO5, but I might be wrong.
It's actually LO5. Yeah. It's
I was trying to be clever. Got too clever. But I'm going to keep going. You're founding member of a cappella group LO5, and you're also part of Jimi Hendrix tribute band and part of a vocal music duo called Afro Acoustics.
Yeah.
So just to talk about them, what is LO5 for anyone who doesn't know?
Right. So LO5 was a professional a cappella group from Puerto Rico that was active from 2015 to 2017. And I was the beatboxer for, you know, this group. And this group was produced by one of the founding members, singers, and arrangers of Puerto Rican a cappella group Noda.
I know, yeah.
Noda was actually the very first winner of the sing-off back in 2009. And one of the producers for that group, wanted to produce another younger type of group that had just a different flair, a different sound to it as well. Because from 2009 to 2015, thanks to the contributions of groups like Pentatonics and Committed and other vocal groups, even groups like the Beatbox Collective in the beatboxing space, they were actually vocal music was becoming a mainstream type of thing. It became much more recognized, much more visible in the music space and in the entertainment space in general. And so this man by the name of Edgar Rios had the idea of producing, I guess, a Latin version of Pentatonics, where, you know, you had five guys, a beatboxer, great singers, great harmonizers, and people who could really sing and do sort of in Spanish, in English, in Spanglish, where we could do covers, original music that cater to the Latin market, and that's kind of how that project came about. And we were actually doing really well, and then we kind of separated and went our separate ways as solo artists, which is usually what happens in groups, anyways. So so that's kind of LO5. It was my first time performing as part of a band. It was my first time working as a beatboxer, percussionist, and all these capacities in a group context. So I really had to learn how to, I guess, tone down a little much of my beatboxing tendencies, because when you're a solo beatboxer and you're on stage by yourself, you're pretty much in control of everything. But when you're in a group, then there's other things that you need to consider, right? And pitch, tempo, what is needed depending on the song that you're singing as well. So I had a chance to learn about all of that, and also just learn a little bit about singing as well, and how I could use that to complement my solo beatboxing pieces. So that was a great experience overall, and we actually had a lot of success doing that. We were on TV, we were in the newspaper, and we had a chance to perform quite a bit. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and that has kind of catapulted me into doing more, for example, live looping, doing a little bit more melodies in my solo pieces, and other things. So that was a great springboard for me, I would say. With respect to the whole Jimi Hendrix band, that was a tribute band that we were doing from 2018 to 2019, and the idea was to combine the rock and like more urban hip hop rap influences, and that's why the founding member, the guitarist, had the idea of using a beatboxer versus a drum kit to do that type of music. And that was also a great learning experience for me, because I didn't really know much about Jimi Hendrix prior to me being in that group. I had heard the name, but I didn't understand really like the music, his legacy, what's the importance of Jimi Hendrix for his contributions to the music industry, to guitar playing, etc. So I had to learn all that, and also just learn the songs and like the fills and the rhythms and all that good stuff. So it was actually pretty challenging, at least in the beginning. But then we started performing, we started doing some gigs, people were enjoying it. There was a little bit of resistance as well, because some of the older, Jimi Hendrix people weren't necessarily very fond of his music being done without a drum kit. But the response was generally very good. And again, musically, it was a challenge for me. It was a space for me to grow when it comes to working with other people, being more musical, being in the pocket, being in conjunction, being in tune with other musicians while you're playing, improvising on stage. It was I guess in the field musical experience for me that I'm really grateful for as well. And then parallel to that, in 2015, Afroacoustics, which is a vocal duo where we incorporate beatboxing, singing, rapping, scatting, live looping, and sort of hybrid instrumentation. Kazoos, my friend who's like the singer songwriter, she can play the kazoo like it was a trumpet. So that's kind of her thing, and she's a hell of a scatter, hell of an improviser. So we incorporate jamming into our compositional practice as well. And we're actually supposed to go to the Moscow Acapella Spring Festival this year. That didn't happen because of COVID, right? But then if all goes well, we should be doing that, representing Puerto Rico at the next edition of the Moscow Spring Acapella Festival, along with that NODA in 2021 or 2022. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, yeah. I think, do you know what? I think they hit up the Beatbox Collective as well, actually, that festival. So we might see you there. You never know. Who knows?
Awesome, yeah.
But yeah, man, that's really interesting. I think it is inspiring for a lot of beatboxers because, you know, from being in those groups, you know, even though each one, you were the beatboxer in the group, each one was so different, and like you really went into like training mode in all of them, and you learned so much that helped develop your, you know, not just your presence in that group, but then for after, you know, you mentioned about now doing a lot more live looping and playing more with singing and harmonies, and I think that's yeah, so it's a really interesting way of doing it, and yeah, it's obviously helped you grow as a beatboxer.
And yeah, and then you know, as an artist, as a musician, when it comes to the Afroacoustics band that I'm working on, we actually just straight like flat out composed original songs. So the concept of somebody singing something that I wrote, you know, a verse that I wrote, a hook that I wrote, is something that is very exciting. It's kind of scary as well because you know you're putting a lot of yourself into the lyrics. So that has really been a space where my friend has kind of encouraged me to write as well as arrange on the music side. So it's just been one big training session for me.
Sick, yeah, a years long training session, but you know it's obviously working, man. 'Cause you're doing great stuff. So yeah, big up for all of that. And you know, talking about live looping a bit, I wanted to move on towards, in fact, the microphone that you're holding now. You're current brand ambassador at Sonos, who make the looper mic. I've also got one, and they're really great. A lot of fun to use. I just wanted to kind of talk about that. How did that come about? What kind of stuff are you doing with them?
So that this partnership came about because Dr. James Clark, who's the founder at the Sonos company, was promoting his Kickstarter campaign for the microphone whenever that was happening a couple years ago on a Facebook group called Loopers Delight, which is like a live looping musician, instrumentalist, beatboxers group. And I had already heard about the looper microphone via videos such as yours. When you were performing it with it and sort of showcasing what you could do with it. And I was already thinking about incorporating live looping into my artistic practice, but I didn't really have the money to buy a full-on loop station yet. So I thought that it would have been a great idea for me to introduce the product to the Latin American market. You know, me being from Puerto Rico, being bilingual in both Spanish and English, and the product being something that's easier to use and cheaper than a standard loop station. And also thinking about how the concept of live looping is not something that's very common in this part of the world.
Okay.
It's not something that the public is used to in the way that they might be in Europe. So thinking about all those elements, I decided to sort of pitch that to Dr. James Clark, the CEO, and that's kind of how it came about. And he agreed, and he agreed to kind of send me a microphone so that I could use it, so that I could test the limits of it as well, because he was really interested in beatboxers actually using his microphone and maybe making better versions of the microphone in the future. So I took it as an opportunity for me to contribute to the development of a piece of music technology And also having a tool that will allow me to explore the area of live looping in the most, I guess, cost-effective way possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of how that happened.
Yeah, sick, man. Well, yeah, it's like I say, it's a great product and it's a lot of fun to play with. So yeah, you can get lost playing on that loop mic. But so off the back of that, like, what advice would you give to beatboxers or artists who are who are looking to maybe join up with brands? What kind of advice could you have for them?
I think it's all about value proposition.
Mm,
What can you bring to them that has value to them?
sure.
And by them I mean the company in question, the brand in question. Because a lot of times, and I think about this, I think this about art in general, is that a lot of times it can be very self-serving, where we are constantly looking for ways that people can serve us. And that kind of mindset doesn't really work when we're trying to either be in a band or trying to build some type of relationship with a brand, with a company, with a school, with a college, university, or whatever the case may be.
Mm,
So I think for me, it's about being clear on what type of value I'm bringing to you. How am I of benefit to your objectives as a company?
mm-hmm.
And what things could I do to kind of further help you further that process? I think those two things: value proposition number one, and then having a clear plan of action as to what you're going to do that's going to bring that value proposition forward.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right, man. And yeah, you kind of hit it right on the head with. There's a lot of kind of opportunities that people can look at, but then it's like you say, it's very self-serving in a respect of, oh, that microphone looks cool, I want that one, please give me one, I want to use it, and then you get it and you don't like it, and then it goes in a drawer, and then you never play with it, and then you're like, well, you're not helping anyone there. So
Exactly.
you're right, and I think the way that you've collaborated with Sonus is great because you're obviously using it, and you've seen that it would be great to introduce it to the market out in Latin America and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's a great way to look at it, man.
I think a third point that I would like to make is just patience. I think being
Mm,
patient is very important. Um, Understanding that these things take time, and also just being consistent in the work. I think is also something that's going to give credibility to the artist in question, and just being professional, being punctual, being honest. We call that being when you are your word.
mm,
If you say you're gonna do something, if you say you're gonna send them an email, if you say you're gonna send them a video, if you say you're gonna send them a picture, do it. And that kind of creates a momentum that just helps everybody further
yeah,
down the line.
yeah, man. Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, that kind of brings me on to my last question for you, which is back, on the back of that advice. And what advice would you have for any beatboxers up and coming, or any beatboxers involved in Puerto Rico and Latin America?
Practice, practice, and practice. No, I mean, I think now because there's so much resources out there, you
Mm,
got tutorial videos, you got full on educational beatboxing events like the Swiss Beatbox Camp, the World Beatbox Camp,
mm,
even the BoxCon Global
mm-hmm,
event that happens online. You got beatboxers that are giving lessons, private lessons. And so there's so many ways that you can learn how to beatbox now, that I think it's just a matter of maximizing and utilizing all those tools in the best way possible. I also think practicing, actually taking the time to work on your craft, I
mm,
think is very important. I think a lot of times beatboxers these days, they just want to learn crazy sounds, and they don't spend enough time on the fundamentals of beatboxing: rhythm, tempo, being able to stay in the pocket, while you're incorporating all your crazy sounds.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that needs to be at the forefront for the next generation, because you can literally uh, do a lot in a month or two these days. So I think that's important. Collaborate with other beatboxers, or maybe even just other types of artists or
Yep.
other types of musicians. I think that's a great thing because that'll expand your horizons, especially on the creative aspect. Um, Listen to music, not just other beatboxers.
Yes.
Tr- uh, dr- uh, Try to figure out ways of bringing your essence as a human being, your interest into this space. I think that's important. If you like gaming, if you like sports, if you like movies, if you like theater, if you like whatever, if you like cars, if you like anything, how can you combine it with this art form to create something that's different and that's original and it's authentic to you, because no other human being has that exact specific life experience that you've had. And I think the beatboxers that have kind of transcended, people such as yourself, Reeves, and others, do so because they're very in tune with who they are and what they like and where they've been in life.
Yeah.
And I think because everybody has a different life experience, there's so many combinations that people can do that being creative and being original, when you look at it in that way, is actually not as hard as you might think, because we're all so different, right?
Yeah.
Even just down to our genetics, to the way our mouth are shaped, the way our mouth is shaped, and just the way our minds work. So I think it's about being in tune with that, and being comfortable in your own skin, and also just be willing to explore
Yeah.
less glamorous, less explored avenues of just art in general.
Yeah.
If you're trying to be an artist,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sick. That was a big barrel of advice and very well accepted. So thank you so much for that. All right, bro. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I've really enjoyed that. And yeah, big up to you. So without further ado, to finish off this edition of Community Spotlight, I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Black Rhythm to finish off with a little beatbox treat for you all. So when you're ready.
Yes, thank you. Shout out to BoxCon. Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. Love it. Caribbean style. This is how we do it in Puerto Rico. This is how we do it in Puerto Rico. is how we do it in Puerto Rico. Give it to
Big up, man. That was dope.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Woo! Smashing it with the fire, Puerto Rican fire, right for you, right at the end there. And yeah, wicked, man. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for that amazing freestyle. And finally, please, can you let the people know where they can find you on socials, on the internet, and anywhere in the world?
Of course, yeah. You can find me at Black Rhythm. That's BLACKRHYTHM. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, website, Google, anywhere. Black Rhythm.
Boom. Just like that. Sick. All right, Black Rhythm. Thank you, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And yeah, I'll see you very soon, my bro. Peace.
Thank you.